So we have with us tonight Brendon Sanchez, who's an architect. He's also the son of Sheila Mitchell. His office is in Portland, and he's doing architecture in a different way. And I would say he's a kind of a holistic architect. And what he's doing is looking at the built environment as a way to foster meaningful connections. So he's drawing from emerging research in fields such as cognitive neuroscience, trauma-informed practices, and he's moving through its outcome-based design process to create better informed and more equitable built environment. So he's seeking to make our communities more resilient by strengthening our sense of individual agency and reinforcing the connections that bring us together. So I think this is going to be very interesting. So Brendon, take it away.
All right, thank you for the intro. Let's see if I can get the screen share set up here. All right, can you all see that? Okay, great. I see heads nodding. Okay, so I am a big fan of case studies, and so when I put this presentation together, I kind of thought of it as a large case study, which hopefully you can take away some points on how to approach work or in life in general a little more intentionally. And so this case study is basically how the firm came to be and some of the thought and research that went into forming it, as well as our design process. I won't really go too much into the firm itself. I'll just give you a quick overview. So we're actually located in downtown Vancouver. That's the building that we're in. It's the Weber Machine Works building, which is a historic building on the south end of downtown, just a block south of the Esther Short Park. We're a fairly new and young firm, just actually 2 years old this month. There's 3 of us currently. So that's our group there. So when I was looking to start the firm, I knew I had some core values in mind that I wanted to establish it with. But one of the things that was really influential for me was listening to a speaker, Simon Sinek, which probably some of you or all of you may have heard of. Talk about organizations and how they should be, how they should project their message out. And his whole point is finding your why. And what he means by that is you see this golden circle, and most organizations communicate what they do from the outside of that circle inwards. And so they start with what they do. They make a product or they provide a service. But his main point is that not only effective organizations, but effective leaders and people that create change know how to communicate from the inside out, where you're really communicating why it is you do what you do. And when you're able to establish why you do what you do, people will make that cause their own, and they will join you in what your mission is. And so I really kind of took that to heart and tried to think about why we might do what we do before I even started the firm. So an example that he gives is the Apple example. And so, if you remember, but Gateway, the computer company, tried to sell flat screen TVs. Dell, also a computer company.
Brendon,
yeah.
Your sound is really garbledy. Let me make sure everybody's on mute.
Is that any better?
Yes.
I can't hear you, so maybe thumbs up if it sounds better.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So So Gateway tried selling flat screen TVs. Dell tried selling MP3 players. They were not successful, even though they had the technology to do so. And so, you know, when you contrast this with Apple, and I'll just read a quote here, which you probably can see, but if Apple was like everyone else, a marketing message might be, we make great computers. They're user-friendly. Want to buy one? But here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? And so you can see how effective that is, but it also, I think what really drew me to that is that, you know, I'm constantly thinking about new ideas and different things to do. But if you can find this why that serves as the common thread between all of these different ventures, I think that's extremely powerful. So that's why they were able to start with computers, but now we all have phones from them, and they used to sell MP3 players, and they have all sorts of technology, and it's partially because of that approach. So architects are problem solvers at heart. We love creative problem solving. So, you know, finding our why started with defining what the problem is.
Brendon, your sound is garbled again.
Sorry, say that again?
Your sound was garbled again.
Oh, sorry about that. Is it better now?
Oh, try it again.
How about now?
Keep talking.
It's weird.
Okay, now it's good.
Usually I don't have any audio problems on Zoom calls. No, that's worse.
No.
No. Let me see.
Brandon, maybe, this is John, maybe if we didn't see you and your presentation both, maybe we just saw your presentation. I don't know whether you can do that, but I think that might be the problem.
I don't think you can do that, actually.
Oh, okay.
All right, how about now?
Nope.
No.
Sorry about that. I don't know why. I've never had a problem before. Let's see.
You sound like the devil.
There.
That's better.
Is that better?
Much.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I've never had that problem before.
Yeah, that works now.
That's better.
Okay. Well, hopefully I don't sound like the devil anymore. That's scary. Okay. So for us, finding our why started with the problem. It's where architects are creative problem solvers at heart. So, you know, in doing some research on and thinking about what are some of the problems that we have right now facing society, still audio problems? Is there an audio problem now?
Sometimes when you log off and log back in, it helps.
Okay, yeah, give me 1 second and I'm gonna try something different. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it sounds good. Weird.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll continue with that, see if that works.
We can't see your slides, though.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
Okay. How's that?
good.
Okay. Hopefully this works. All right. So I was thinking about what are the problems that we have in society today, and this kind of sense of disconnectedness. And so, one of those issues is social media and the usage of that and its correlation with depression, increased, opioid use and drug-related deaths and overdoses, and kind of what that led me to realize is that when we have positive connections in our lives, we fill those voids with detrimental dependency. Can you all still hear me well?
Yeah, but a little garbled.
It's good enough though. Your graphics are great. I think we can move forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then I started doing some research and some reading, and one of the books that was really instrumental for me was Social, which is written by a cognitive neuroscientist, researching how our brain reacts to different social situations, both positively and negatively. And so he posits that Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy is actually a little bit off. And the reason is, as you can read on the right, I'll paraphrase here, but essentially, when we're born, we actually need a caretaker, because as babies, we can't gather our own food, we can't feed ourselves. And so in that instance, that social bond is actually the most important thing as a basic need.
Mm-hmm.
Another book that was very kind of impactful for me was Welcome to Your World, which is specifically about the intersection of cognitive neuroscience and architecture. And that goes into some specifics regarding materiality and the effect that has on our mood. And so, examples being comparing the richness and texture of wood with metal. And with our built environment, even though we aren't going around touching buildings, when we look at a building, subconsciously we think to ourselves, what would it feel like to touch that building? So if it's a material that's cold, we're going to feel like the building has kind of a cold sense to it and would react differently than if the building were made of rich materials like brick or wood. In that book, she also touches on urban design, and I'll just read this quote. The greater a city dweller's access to greenery and light and open spaces, the better she will solve problems and understand and take in new information. The more mastery she has over her limited attentional resources, directing and sustaining them where and when she wants, and the more effective she will be in regulating her emotions. All this translates into improved psychological well-being and better interpersonal relations. And there's more. Residents lucky enough to live in a housing development surrounded by vegetation, trees, grass, flowers, enjoy and maintain stronger social ties with their neighbors. They enjoy a sense of community more robust than residents in a similar building, lacking in these natural features. And so all of this led me to the understanding that what I wanted to do, the reason why, is to facilitate meaningful connections, knowing that there are so many ways in our lives where we might have voids that we might want to fill with a dependency of some sort. I wanted to use architecture as a way to foster meaningful connections. And as a side note, one of the things I realized in my journey in Peru with my mother was that meaningful connections is actually another way of saying love. And so I guess essentially we're trying to foster love through architecture, and whether that's love amongst ourselves or with nature or history, everybody needs these meaningful connections in their lives. And what that is different for everybody. So our why is the meaningful connections. The how we do it is through informed design and community engagement, which I'll discuss a little bit later. We just happen to be doing it through architecture. So informed design, that's the first component to how we do what we do. Traditional architectural practices, you do site research on the program. You might look at solar orientation, prevailing winds, and those are all important. But we also want to take a deeper dive into informed design as it relates to outcomes. And so it's at the beginning of the project, sitting down with our client and identifying what the outcomes are. And then based on that, we perform research, whether that be reading scholarly journals and articles or doing interviews, but gathering information that then helps inform our design decisions so that we're more intentional. And then once the projects are built, we intend to go back and do data gathering so that we can analyze if we were more effective in achieving those outcomes. And if not, what are the lessons learned that we can apply towards future projects? And so creating a feedback loop where we're continuously building upon our body of work. I love this quote: "When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower." And so, you know, we really want to understand what is the built environment that we're creating. I think a lot of architectural design doesn't consider how we feel in spaces. We consider in design how it looks from a certain perspective, but how do we actually feel, and how does that building or that place impact us over a longer period of time? And so here are a couple of different excerpts from research that we've performed. These ones specifically talking about access to nature and the positive effects that it has on us, which I'm sure you all are aware of. And, you know, these are all the research that we're doing is all things that we probably all know intuitively. But with science progressing and cognitive neuroscience and fMRI, you know, we're starting to be able to, I guess, prove these scientifically, which helps me as an architect when I go into a design meeting and discuss a design. It's one thing for me to say, well, I think this is how it's going to feel. But if I'm able to back that up with substantive evidence that that's, you know, research based, then that tends to hold a little more weight. So it's actually helpful for us as well when discussing our design decisions. So this slide speaks to research around being able to control your environment. And so, you know, when we do designs for example, we're doing one for a domestic violence shelter. We do some for affordable housing for formerly homeless people. Feeling like you can have control and ownership over your own space is a huge thing for mental health. And so, you know, we're looking at what are some small ways that we can encourage residents to personalize their own areas, you know, whether it's movable furniture or little plantable gardens, or maybe it's even a chalkboard inside their unit where they can write notes or draw on it. You know, I think there's a lot of opportunity for personalization so that they don't feel like they're just one of X number of apartment units in a building. So the other half of the how we do what we do is community engagement, and I spoke to it a little bit in the design process of data gathering, engaging community members up front, and getting feedback on what they would like to see, what they find valuable in the built environment, what they don't, to help better inform our design. But the other part of community engagement is actually time outside of the office. And so all of us at the office spend time volunteering that is paid for by the office on work hours. And that really came out of my own need to feel like I was making a difference in the community directly. It's one thing to do it in an office where you're designing, but it's different when you're face to face and helping someone directly. So I volunteer with a program called Architects in Schools. Our family makes lunches during the summertime for kids that are on free or reduced lunch through the school district. Some other team members at the office donate time at the food bank. And so everyone kind of picks what they identify with or what they feel comfortable with volunteering and spends time doing that. So here's a few, I'm going to go through a few projects of ours. This one is currently under construction. And so in the design process here, we were very intentional about where we use wood, knowing that the effects of wood are very positive and have a calming feel, association of home. But when you're designing and building buildings, wood is expensive, and it's also a little bit more difficult to maintain. So you can see in this design, we used wood at locations where users would be walking by and really kind of get that tactile experience. And then other areas that were more of just the exterior siding, we used a cost-effective lap siding material. And so in that way, we're able to afford nicer materials where they're going to have the greatest impact and benefit for the residents. That's a construction photo. So on the inside, so in the previous photos, it was taken from fairly busy street. We used the buildings to shield the interior courtyard, so it provides an acoustical buffer to help make it a little more peaceful and serene. And then we were very intentional about how we designed these spaces, knowing that everyone's going to have a different comfort level with how open of space they want to be in. Some people may not even come out of their unit, depending on if they've had a lot of trauma in their life and just aren't comfortable with that yet. So we've designed for a gradient of spaces, similar like we're finding out for an office space. Just having an open office isn't a good idea as we're learning. Everyone's different. Everyone works differently. They need different accommodations, and the same thing with housing or every other aspect of our life. Everyone's different, and so how do we design on that gradient for different spaces for connection? Open spaces, covered spaces, semi-enclosed, and so people can choose, and that's again kind of the reoccurring theme, right? Is they can choose their comfort level of engagement and connection, in the hopes that they'll eventually feel more comfortable to get outside of their bubble a little bit. This was another project that's in design right now. Uses the exact same unit plans as the previous project we looked at, but we just changed the exterior design. In this one, we were able to do front stoops for the units, and so that helps activate the streetscape and invite connection that way. But there's also a clear delineation of public and private, so that you still feel that sense of security and like your unit's just not right out on the sidewalk. This one, we played with color a little bit, so you can see there's a teal color And then there's some other more muted colors on the other buildings. So we're using color as a wayfinding element, but we're also using muted tones to help with kind of that soothing feel, and not using heavily saturated colors, which tend to excite people and potentially cause more stress. Both of these projects are for people at 0 to 30% AMI, so either homeless or on the verge of homelessness, and most of them have experienced trauma in their lives. And so we were trying to be very cognizant of creating a built environment that felt safe and comforting. So these are some additional views of that same project. You can see we incorporate vegetation, and we always try to incorporate community gardens wherever possible. The benefits of gardening and access to nature, there's just so many that we feel it's important on every project. But again, you have a variety of spaces to choose from to engage or not engage with others around you. This was a commercial project that's in construction. So it's a sushi restaurant, a very small space, but again, we tried using wood as a natural material where possible. And while we're not able to have a community garden or, you know, any type of landscaping in here because it's indoors, we are proposing a wall graphic that has a bamboo look to it to kind of provide that same effect. And studies do show that art that shows natural landscapes can have the same effects as actually being in the environment. Not to the same degree, but it is better than not having it. This is another project that we're designing. And so this is for a country club, which is on the totally opposite end of the economic spectrum. But the common thread, again, is community and these connections. And so, again, using kind of wood and tactile material at the ground level, trying to create a sense of simplicity and order to the facade so it feels rational and you can understand it when you look at it. A lot of buildings now look overly complicated, and that can make you uneasy. And so we try to apply order and logic in our design, which is based on centuries of architectural design. This is just some of the, we call it massing studies of how that design came to be, looking at responding to the different contextual elements of adjacent homes and adjacent commercial buildings. So I just threw that in just to kind of give you an idea of some of the graphics we put together when we present to our clients on how we arrived at the formal design. Some other perspectives of that same building. This is a project that I worked on at my previous firm, but I started to apply some of these thoughts already into this. And this is an affordable housing project in Portland, specifically for the Native American population. And so there's very kind of culturally specific elements that are incorporated into it. It's called Nasika Elahi, which translates as our place. And that actually came out of the idea of trying to tell kind of a untold history or an untold story. And as I was doing research, I came across an article talking about how the Chinook language is actually almost non-existent anymore. There's only a couple of people left that speak it fluently. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if our project could raise awareness to this, and maybe integrate some of that language back into the building so that people see that and start to wonder, and maybe in that way it can keep that language living on in some way, or maybe inspire someone to learn it. These are some of the spaces and artwork that are featured in the building. The upper left-hand corner is the community room, trying to use natural materials, but very light and airy so that it feels welcoming and uplifting. In the upper right is the courtyard. It's hard to see, but there's some artwork inlaid into the concrete score joints. And there's just a ton of artwork throughout this project, so it was very cool. And that is it. I sped it up a little bit due to the audio issues, so I'm not sure what time we're at here. I guess we're not too bad. But yeah, I really apologize about the audio problems. I'm not sure what was going on there.
So do you want to answer some questions then, Brandon?
Yeah, as long as the audio is working okay.
You're still a little garbled. Maybe if you took the screen share off, it would go away. Put your picture back. There you are.
How's that?
Fine so far.
Okay, maybe it was the screen share was just too much with the audio. I apologize.
I don't know. Yeah. Technology is great when it works. So if did anybody have a question, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, we were just wondering if who's paying for some of those projects, the community projects. They're really nice, really love them.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful workmanship. And a lot of those are for city people. Who is the city paying, or who finances these?
Good question. It is extremely convoluted. There's often over 10 different financing, we call them, funding streams. So a lot of them are what we call LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. And those are tax credits that are at the state level that get awarded to projects that apply. So it's a competitive application process. Not to get too into the weeds, but essentially whoever gets awarded those tax credits then gets to sell the tax credits to an investor who gets to use those tax credits for their taxes. So that is all affected actually by the economy. So what we saw when the current administration was elected was that tax credits got devalued because corporations anticipated tax cuts or tax breaks. Therefore, tax credits weren't as valuable, which means affordable housing projects all of a sudden had very large funding gaps because they had anticipated to get 95 cents on the dollar and it dropped to 85 cents on the dollar, which doesn't sound like a lot, but ended up being, $1 million or more on some projects. So that's one source of revenue. Then there's, in Portland, there's the housing bond money. So you kind of have to, no one really wants to fully fund a project. They want to see that their money is being leveraged to fund projects. So if they can put $1 million into a project that's 50 units, then they consider that good leveraging. So you end up having to cobble together a bunch of different funding sources.
And you do that yourselves? That's part of what you have to do to make that work.
No, that's the developer. But affordable housing is very nuanced in that way, and since we understand that process, we can help our clients because with every source of funding, there are strings attached. And so we understand what those strings are and how they affect the architectural design, what sustainability requirements you need, and things like that.
Mm, beautiful. That's great work. It must make you feel very good to be doing this kind of thing also. I mean, what a, that sense of your own personal satisfaction and your firm's satisfaction must be very high.
Yeah, I mean, I feel thankful every day that I get to do what I love, and it also helps others, which was kind of what that quote at the end was about. So yeah, we're all very grateful, and part of it is projecting out there what our values are, and the people that align with those values and share those values want to work with us, and the ones that don't align with those values, we maybe don't want to work with them then.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm wondering how widespread this approach is, and if you consider yourself to be an ambassador in any way to try to spread this way of thinking.
Yeah, there actually is, in La Jolla, there is a group that is exploring the intersection of architecture and cognitive neuroscience. But it's an emerging field, just like cognitive neuroscience itself is really kind of taken off lately. But I don't know of many people or many firms doing this. Where it kind of started was in the healthcare field, evidence-based design, which I'm sure you've heard evidence-based before. But for us, it's more about the outcomes than the evidence. You know, the evidence is a means, but it's not the end. And so we really wanted to, rather than focus on the evidence, focus on the outcomes, because a lot of our clients are mission-based, and so they have very specific outcomes that they want, whether it's decreased housing turnover or decreased domestic violence. You know, so and you could see how it applied to a school situation where you want better information retention. So it's identifying what the outcomes are, and then how do we be more intentional with our design to try to achieve those outcomes. So it's not unheard of, but I haven't really come across someone that's trying to do it the same way that we are. And I don't know if I consider myself an ambassador. We're pretty young, so part of this is exploring this idea. We have projects that we're designing, and we have one that's in construction, but we haven't had a chance to do the end of that feedback loop you saw of the measuring the built environment and doing surveys, and how does that inform the next project. It takes a long time. You know, I said we've been around for 2 years, and we just now have our first project halfway through construction that we started design on 2 years ago. So it takes some time before we start getting some information coming back in.
Yeah, it'll be fun to sit here with the residents. Are you going to be asking residents to comment on the experience then?
Yes, absolutely. And what we plan to do on projects is actually try to bring on prospective residents during the design phase to give them input and to ask, you know, what their needs are, because they would know better than us what they need. So, you know, we don't try to be presumptuous and design the best space and think that we know what that is, because that's different for everybody.
And so just so they get to would have them put on the floor plan as well as the external, or
yeah, I mean, it's hard to know who's going to move in before a project's built. But so some of the things that we have done on our current project is we've selected different materials, or for example, paint colors. So when they move in, they'll get to select an accent wall paint color in their unit, which is not commonly done. And we're trying to create opportunities where they can personalize their space, because we feel that's how community is best formed, is when people feel like a place is theirs and they take ownership over it. And so how do we facilitate that in the built environment? That's kind of one of the things we're interested in.
Thank you.
So
I I apologize for coming in so late and missing a lot of your presentation, but I loved the parts that I saw. They were so beautiful, so heartwarming. And when you mentioned that this field kind of developed initially in healthcare, it reminded me that I had been trained as a horticultural therapist, and there was a lot of research that showed the health benefits of having trees and plants in a natural environment for healing environments. In other words, health outcomes were much better if people could even just see greenery or trees from their window, but also for families to go visit and have nature to walk in. And so when you mentioned schools, I'm curious, is there also that same kind of research of the benefit of having garden spaces associated with schools architecturally? I mean, I don't know, but I know that I studied it for healthcare because I was in the healthcare field at the time.
Yeah, good question. And we don't do school projects yet because that's a very difficult market to break into, but I would imagine so. There definitely is research around daylight and effectiveness of education. I mean, daylight in hospital environments too, and recovery times. So, you know, there's a lot of information out there, and there's going to continue to be more. And so it's a matter of, you know, intentionally finding that information and trying to be more informed, like you were talking about, rather than just designing a school the way you're used to designing it. So I'm really excited about, you know, I'm not a huge technology person. My mom will tell you, I can attest that I don't use Facebook, and you know, that's not me, but I do recognize the need and probably inevitability of technology and data. And so I was interested in how do we use data in a positive way. And I really see cognitive neuroscience as one way to help the architectural profession yield data that can have positive outcomes. And so I'm excited about the emerging technology and research in those fields, and understanding. You can actually understand, they can map what's happening in the brain as you go through a space. So they've found spaces that have large expanses of glass. If you're walking along a street and you see a large storefront with expanses of glass, that'll actually increase your heart rate and your stress level a little bit, because it's a cold, hard surface and there's no texture to it. And they actually found that people sped up a little bit when they were walking past it, versus if you imagine walking down, you know, a European street with cobblestones, and you've got this really rich texture of buildings, and there's all these different scales of elements, and there's flowers, and, you know, we respond a lot better to those type of contexts. And so we're able to start studying how our brain is functioning in different physical spaces. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, the research that I specifically remember has to do with people who were recovering from surgery had decreased need for medication, faster recovery, shorter hospital stays when they had visual access, just even visual, like they were still in hospital beds, so they weren't going out, when they had visual access to natural environments. And I know the Japanese, which have a limited space, are having indoor gardens. And so I just kind of, I've heard some of the stuff about the neuroscience and architectural design, and I love that you're really onto that, but I just want to add gardens as a possibility. It's kind of my thing.
Paul, do you have
Sure.
a question? Oh, Paul, did you have a question? You had your hand up.
My question for you is, I've had some experience with the senior living industry, these complexes that are being built all over. Is that a viable candidate for some of your architectural influence, or do you find them following a different market strategy?
No, I think that's one area I'm interested in applying this next, because, you know, I talked about wayfinding a little bit with colors. You know, there's so much to be considered in design for senior living facilities that I feel isn't addressed right now in design. And as we know, connection becomes even more important at that stage of life. And so how do we create built environments where they don't feel isolated, and they feel like they have that opportunity to engage as part of a community? And how do we support that in the built environment? I think you're right. It's an area that could definitely use a lot more attention.
Good point. And I would say also, if you would like a contact for collaborating, where I used to work when I was the organic gardening coordinator when I took the horticultural therapy was at Elite Care at Oatfield Estates. And Elite Care has deliberate design features that to accommodate interaction, engagement, not alienating seniors, helping with dementia. So they have architectural features that support people wellness. If you wanted to look into them.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Thank you.
Billy?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation, Brendon. And it only had a little bit of garble, so it was great. Mostly what your work seems to be inside the city. And this is very timely because I've been kind of mulling over the idea of creating a community here where I live, which is rural. It's 3 acres on a lake, a private lake. And I was wondering if you have any experience in working in the rural areas. It would be really related to agriculture, gardening. There's the soil is wonderful. Whether, I don't have the why, the how, or the what yet. And whether it would be tiny homes or, units, or how that would work. But I'd like your input on if you work in the rural areas.
Yeah, I do have experience in rural areas with mostly with affordable housing, but I have come up with a concept for kind of little cottages out of prefabricated trusses. Actually, this is an idea that I came up with maybe 10 years ago, but trusses are cheap, but they end up being wasted spaces on houses. So I was kind of interested in how do you basically make a large attic truss and you set it directly on the foundation, and those could be cost-effective little cottages in a rural situation. So yeah, I probably don't have experience in the exact project that you're talking about, but closely enough, I'd be happy to share some ideas with you.
That'd be great. I'll get your contact information. Even though it's rural, I really am excited about all the new technology that's coming out, and we do have fiber optics here. So, I want to marry the two, the rural and the technology and the new way of doing the buildings. Whether it's solar or what, so pretty exciting.
Yeah, let's connect up afterwards. I'd be happy to talk about it with you.
7-star?
Yeah, I just had a comment and then a question. My comment is just that I work with a lot of people who are low income or homeless, and I've actually been with many people when they're moving into a shelter or they're moving into low income housing. And I don't know about research, but I just can tell you that I can attest to seeing people just breaking down, crying, and being so excited about how they have a space that's theirs, that they can decorate. And like when you were saying about the accent wall, all those little considerations, it's true, it really makes a huge difference for people. And just seeing how wonderful it is for them to move into somewhere that they feel like they have some control and some agency and independence. It's wonderful. So it has a huge impact. And so I just think it's awesome what you're doing. I wanted to say that. And my question is, where in your process did you start to have this orientation toward this approach? Like, did you have this before and then that's the reason why you became an architect? Or was it during your education that you started turning toward this, or afterward when you already worked in the field, or where along the process was it that you decided this is how you wanted to approach what you do? And kind of, if you could talk about how that happened for you, I'm curious. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Our goal, like, there's nothing I love hearing more than when someone sees like a affordable housing project and they say, I have no idea that was actually affordable housing. It looks like a regular, market rate housing project. That's my goal. People shouldn't live in a place that looks like affordable housing. But as far as like how I came to the ideas, I wanted to be an architect since I was 7, but I had no idea that this is what it's going to be like, right? What everyone imagines architecture is maybe like 5%. A lot of it is managing workflow and consultants and fee proposals, just a bunch of stuff that is not sexy at all, but is part of the job. So, when I went to college, I started getting a better idea of what it was. But it wasn't really until maybe my 6th year in the field where I was working at a firm that had the same values as I do now. We did a lot of affordable housing. We worked with nonprofits. So the intentions were there, but there wasn't the follow through of actually, I guess there wasn't the follow through of actually like trying to make change. And I think probably for me, the biggest thing was I was sitting at a computer desk doing these designs, and that just wasn't satisfying enough for me. I needed to volunteer. And when I talked to friends and family, and it was kind of the same conversation every time, which was, I would really love to volunteer, but I don't have the time. And we're so busy right now with work, and the lines are blurred even more so now, obviously in COVID, between work and home, that people just had the weekends to be with friends and family. And so there wasn't that additional time to be out in the community volunteering. And I really just felt the need to create that opportunity for myself and for future employees, which is why we volunteer on work time. And so that was really what started it. That's what kind of drove me to go off on my own. But I didn't really get into the idea of the outcome-based design until I started the firm and started doing some research. And so it's still very much in progress. And I think that's the exciting thing, is hopefully it always will be. We're hopefully always going to be continuously evolving and not stuck in our ways. But it's just been it definitely wasn't one of those, I knew from the beginning this is what I wanted it to be. I've always been kind of the type where have a plan that you're working towards so that you're always being productive, but always remain open to opportunities. And when you take those opportunities, sometimes they lead you in ways that you wouldn't have expected. And so that's just kind of how it happened. I've always had a plan, but where I'm at now wasn't part of the plan. It's through other ideas or opportunities that came up that this came to be.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say, Brendon, before someone else has a question, that your buildings are beautiful. I'd like to know more about your low-income housing. Like what square footage do they have? What's the configuration of the units, and how many units? And what are these people that use? I seem to say that these are people that are coming in off the street to actually have a space. Is that right? And then just describe those more about the use and the layout and all that.
Sure. So that also is a little bit on a case-by-case basis. We work with the client to figure out, so some of the funding sources I mentioned earlier are for different demographic or economic levels, I guess I would say. We say AMI, area median income. So there's 0 to 30, there's 30 to 50, 50 to 80, and then 80 to 100. And so some of the projects I showed you were 0 to 30. So that's people that are basically making no money, or very, very little. But we design, I've done projects for the full range. So ones we looked at were 1-bedrooms, where people are, coming in off the street, either single or a couple. They might have some substance abuse or issues or mental health issues. And so part of what we do in our design as well is try to do wraparound services. So it's not just housing, it's housing plus. And so there'll be services on site or next to the site. So the projects that you saw are actually in conjunction with CMAR to provide health services for residents there. But it really varies. Sometimes the project will be targeting singles or couples, and other times it'll be family housing. We're working on 2 projects right now in Portland that will be for families, and then also veterans. And so it kind of just depends on what the developer chooses they want to, what community or demographic they want to try to serve.
So what size are these units?
So those ones, so a couple of the projects we looked at, they're what we call efficiency 1-bedroom units. So they're 400 square feet, which is pretty small. That's definitely on the smaller side. But if it's a 2-bedroom, a typical is maybe 650 square feet. Sorry, that's a 1-bedroom, would be 650. 2-bedroom would be 850 square feet. And a 3-bedroom would be 1,100 square feet, would be pretty typical per unit. Those are all in urban markets. So, you tend to see the more urban a project is, the more expensive the land cost, which means the units tend to get a little bit smaller because you have to basically make the project pencil out. The interesting thing about affordable housing is it's risky because you are locked into 20 years of affordability in most cases. So if your market rate, if you need more money because you have to replace the roof or something like that, you can up the rent. But in affordable housing, if you've promised to your funders, to your lenders, that you're targeting people at 0 to 30% AMI, you can't charge over a certain amount of rent per month. So you're effectively locked in for 20 years on how much revenue you're generating, which means you have to anticipate your maintenance costs up front for 20 years. And if that changes, then you have to find money elsewhere. So it's kind of interesting in that way when you think about it.
So we saw a documentary a while back about these projects in some of, like New York and some of these places where they built projects and they all got run down and they weren't taken care of and all that kind of stuff. And they were just big block buildings that looked like they came from Russia, actually. Your buildings obviously look different than that, and they probably haven't been around long enough. But how much do, like, the gardens and things like that, are they used? Are the people using them? Are they using the spaces? Are they keeping them up? That kind of, because it seems like the kind of thing that you're creating would make somebody want to take care of it and want to be, you would be happy there.
Yeah, so we're very intentional about what I want is someone to be able to walk up to a development and say, there's my unit right there. It's that one with the flowers in the window, or some sort of personalization. What you're referring to, there's a good example called Caprini Green, which was a housing development in Chicago, but it's indicative. It's torn down now, but it's indicative of a lot of the larger affordable housing developments you were talking about, where it's these massive buildings and then you have a lot of open space, but there's no gradient of spaces. You've got large building and then you've got open space. And so there's no choice for people. Some people don't want to be out in a gigantic field or on a basketball court. They want something a little more intimate, or some people don't want to have a unit that is 1 in, 1,000 on this gigantic building. So it's about breaking down the scale to a human level, and using materials that have that human kind of tactile feel to them. I mean, brick is a great example. We try to use brick where we can in urban settings because it has that human scale to it. You can hold a brick in your hand. And so it's being intentional with those design elements that kind of bring a sense of humanity to the buildings, so you don't feel like we're just trying to cram people in a housing project. We want people to feel ownership and pride over where they live.
Hi, this is a little bit more of a comment than a question, and I really appreciated your presentation, and I appreciate all of the thought and research that you're doing, before you're constructing these buildings, so they're more people friendly and more environment friendly. And there's so many moving pieces at one time. And I actually am somebody who's very interested in like composting and recycling and things. And when I lived on the East Coast in Virginia, I had the opportunity to read an article in a magazine about an architect, and I was wondering if you were familiar with him, William McDonough, I think, or Dunna, and he was at the University of Virginia, and he has written a book, Cradle to Cradle, on plastic with ink that will slide off so that you can print another book on it and stuff. But just fascinating architecture. And anyway, I just thought if you ever feel like you need another challenge, maybe that will be your next one, is making buildings that are sustainable in terms of just all the systems in there. So, and maybe you do some of that already, I don't know, but I was just very impressed by all the work that you did.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely, sustainability is a huge focus. I don't really talk about it too much because a lot of firms in the Northwest are also very sustainably conscious. So when we talk to other clients about it, a lot of people are doing that already, so it's not really different. But I'm LEED certified. We have on all of our projects sustainable components. We're always looking for ways to limit water usage. We use LED lights throughout our projects. If our projects can't afford solar, we install the infrastructure so that we call it solar ready, so that if they ever wanted to install it later, it's simply fishing the lines through the conduit and then installing the panels on the roof. And so we accommodate that to try to future-proof some of these buildings as well. But we're very big on sustainability. We focus equally on indoor air quality. I think that's something that we don't really talk about from sustainability, but we're inside of buildings a very large percentage of our day, and the materials that are inside of those buildings have a profound effect on our health. So we always specify no VOC paints. We specify flooring that's floor score certified. And so we're very conscious about the materials that we use in our buildings, because that's just as important for these residents.
Great, thank you.
I already asked a question, but I'd like to ask another one if nobody else wants to right now. Okay, they're quick. But first, I just really want to say how lovely it is that I think I heard you say that part of your reason to start your own firm was so that you could have your time to volunteer as you wanted to. And to me, that walking your talk of just wanting to create connection like that is lovely. So my questions are, regarding choice and indoor air quality, I get frustrated when I'm in buildings where I can't open the windows. And that's a choice that's important to me. And I understand that in big buildings you can't. So I'm just wondering your thoughts about buildings where you can't open the windows. And then the other question, you said that you built this community country club. And I'm wondering, you said something about building it to help promote connections, but I'm wondering if the people who wanted you to build it had that outcome, if that was the outcome that they were looking for.
Yeah, so the first part about the operable windows, we totally agree, and we always incorporate operable windows. It kind of goes along with that, you know, having control over your environment is an important thing. And I think some designs don't have operable windows because their fear is that it gets left open and then the HVAC system runs and it's you know, using energy, which, you know, maybe that's appropriate for some building types, but if we're going to be spending a fair amount of hours there, whether it's an office or your home, I feel it's important to have that ability to get fresh air for sure. And then the second part was the country club. Yeah, that was definitely at the forefront of their desires. Is they wanted a place where they could come together and play card games, do art. They have a lot of meetings and they have a lot of different clubs and task force. So we're designing a wide range of spaces, including a fitness center as part of that. And so, you know, it's a different, it's a more inclusive community, but it is a community nonetheless. And that's what's important to them, are getting together with each other and having those opportunities. So that was for sure one of their desired outcomes that we're trying to design around.
And so what might be an example of something that you would do that another firm might not do if they weren't conscious of the purpose or the outcome?
Sure. So it's being like, so one example would be being intentional with the material design. And so in places where we want people to feel more at ease and relaxed, that's when you're able to connect better, is looking at different material palettes. And we're still early in the design process, so I can't give you an exact example yet because we just kind of started on that. But those are the types of things we would look at, is how do we make this space feel comfortable to where you can kind of let your guard down and have those conversations. One of the things we did do in the design so far is, rather than just creating a hallway that leads to different rooms, we actually made it wider so that and we're almost considering it like an avenue where people can walk down it to get to and from the different rooms, but there's space along each side with benches and other nooks where people can stop and have a conversation. Maybe someone's getting out of aerobics class and they see someone else going into the gym, you know, coming out of the gym, and like, oh, hey, how's it going? We want it to feel comfortable for them to stand in the hallway and talk without feeling like they're impeding traffic. So considering the corridor as a space in and of itself, not just to get from point A to point B, but it's part of the experience, is one way that we can create more opportunities for those kind of impromptu connections.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Seems like you're thinking of everything. I mean, these buildings are just wonderful. Who else has a question? We have some time left. Lynn, did you want to ask another? Oh, no? Okay. Anybody? Was there anything else you'd like to say to us, Brenda? Oh, Rosie?
I just wanted to say, again, I apologize for coming in late, but one of the buildings looked very much like the Ions Retreat Center on North of San Francisco. It was so beautiful, and it just reminded me of that openness, and it's the feeling with the windows and the positioning of the interior spaces. It's as if it welcomes, it's very welcoming by the way it's designed. It has that feeling, and that it just hit me. So I don't know if you were involved in that design, but it really reminded me of that very much.
Yeah, Ions is going to be redesigning or remodel. I guess they're redoing all the housing for their retreat center and their headquarters. It'd be nice if you could get the contract.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes. Yes. Go for it.
So anybody else have anything they'd like to say before we do and Brendon, did you have anything else you'd like to say to us? Kind of wrap up your program?
Well, again, just going to apologize for the audio, but I appreciate the opportunity, and it's still very much a work in progress. Like I said, we have yet to have our first major project built, so now I can keep you all informed as we go along and investigate this kind of outcome-based design further, and it'll be a continuous work in progress, but we're excited about it. So.
Great.
Johnny, once again, you have surprised us with a very interesting program, and I thank you very much. You're a wizard.
I did have one relatively quick question, and that is, it sounds like, Brendon, and maybe I missed it, that what your firm does is new construction. Would you also do remodels too?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just showed new construction projects, but we are doing remodels. We're doing a remodel right now of a women's domestic violence shelter, as well as a substance abuse treatment center. But we've done rehabs of housing projects as well, historic rehabs. So we do a little bit of everything. Our projects, we do rural sometimes, but they tend to be more urban just because urban projects are more complicated, and I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like challenging projects. So our clients end up hiring us for that reason, because we have experience in urban development where you're dealing with inches instead of feet. But we do a little bit of everything.
Oh, thank you. And Johnny, will you get the contact information for Brendon?
Sure.
Okay.
I did turn the recording on. So I'll be sending that out. And when I do, I'll send out Brendon's website and phone number, Brendon.
Oh yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You can send
his contact information.
Yeah, you can send my email address too. That's fine.
Great. So Brendon, this was just wonderful. Thank you so much. So
you're welcome.
We're going to go ahead and do our unstringing the beads. So let's start with Sheila, Mom.
Hi, I'm Sheila from Portland, Oregon. It's always a real delight and joy to listen to Brendon talk. He just has a lot of wisdom, and it's a joy for me to watch him develop through these years and manifest his dreams and his hopes and his love and passion. I have been actually inside of one of the projects he had finished at the opening, and for affordable housing, and they're just so beautiful. The space inside it's simple but warm, inviting, and the way it is developed around communication and connection. So there are meeting rooms. This particular one, I'm talking about the Barcelona, Brendon, where you can go outside and have a little terrace patio to congregate, or inside a meeting room, and it was just very inviting. I was ready to move in. Really refreshing to know that people that wouldn't have any housing can go to a place where it's actually just heartwarming. So I think in medicine, which is my field, it's so important. The built environment is so important, and I tried to make my clinic like that, with full spectrum lighting and non-toxic paint and all of that. And this was 20 years ago when it wasn't quite so popular. So and a lot of those ideas from Brendon about how important that is, your built environment. So anyways, I'm just very, very, very proud of him, and always a pleasure to listen to him talk. And I always learn quite a bit from him. So thank you.
Thank you. Billy?
Yes, thank you so much. It was very inspiring to me and gave me a lot of new ideas. And I also know you a little bit through your mother, and I know how proud she is of you. So that's pretty incredible. So thank you so much for sharing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Joy, did you have a last comment?
Yes, I really thank you very much for this program, and thank you to the presenter, and congratulations to the mom. You really did a great job of raising this brilliant son.
Thank you. Rosie? Nothing? Paul, did you want to have a final comment?
This is Paul. I don't know if my picture comes through, but I'm at the bay. I'm at the beach. It's nice over here. Brendon, what a delight. Boy, I'm invigorated by what you're doing. It reminds me of an old college friend who was designing homes back when, before solar ever became in, and he focused particularly on passive solar design. He eventually learned that I really can't make any money on this, and so I need to go where the market was, which was really unfortunate. But later years, he began incorporating a lot of technology back into the houses that he could build independently for individuals. I wish you well, and I hope that you are able to make some inroads into the senior living facilities. My experience wasn't the greatest, but they're important places, and there's so much they can do with design and with color to make those places much more welcoming to our seniors that don't have another choice once they are unable to live at home. So all the best in your work, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Lynn?
Wow, I kind of ditto what everybody else says here. I was excited to put son and mom together, and because I had no knowledge, and I'm just very impressed with the work that you're doing, Brendon, and you give me encouragement for the generation coming in, and what the values that you carry forward in your work, and your people-centered focus is just very heartening. So I thank you, and if there's something we can do to help push that along, you just let us know. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
7-star?
Well, I really appreciate the presentation. I was just thinking how, when you encounter people who have had trauma, they usually don't feel like they're worth very much because of how they've been treated in life, and they kind of come to this conclusion that they're not important, or they're not worth being treated well. So the idea that anyone can use whatever their profession is, or whatever they do in life, to send the message to people that they are valuable, and that they have just as much worth as anyone else, and they deserve, for example, a lovely and comfortable place to live. It's just really wonderful to see someone using their job to do that, and to interact with people in that way. It's so important, because there's so many people who have that feeling about themselves. So that was really inspiring for me, and I wrote down bunch of notes. I really like how you said that the why is at the center of what you do. And that kind of got me thinking too about my own why and why I do what I do. So yeah, it was a great impact on me. I appreciate it a lot, and I really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen?
Yes, thank you very much, Brendon. I'm so grateful that there are people like you out there that are thinking differently and are putting that forward in what's going on today. And good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Victoria?
Yeah, ditto what people have said. I used to work with people experiencing low income and homelessness, and we did build some affordable housing, so I know how hard it is to do that. I think the point that I love that quote that you shared with us about if something's wrong with the flower, you don't try to fix the flower, you try to fix the environment. And I guess my question about the ambassador is like, you know, our society needs to shift to that kind of mentality. How do we make a world that humans want to live in, all humans, instead of, you know, what has motivated us till now. So thank you so much for your work. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Rosie?
I just had so little to say, but I want to say ditto to everybody. I'm so grateful that you're in the world and so grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing, and the world needs it. And it just is really heartwarming to hear about it. Thank you.
Barb? Would you like to make a last comment or a comment? Are you there?
Hi. I just so much apologize for coming in late, but I've appreciated what I've been hearing here. I am all for bettering humanity through providing for all income levels and the homeless people of our time. I recently had major colon surgery, and so it's wonderful participating in this, even though I'm rather bedridden at the time. Again, thank you, Brendon. So lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Well, get well soon, Barb.
Thank you very much.
Bo, is that you with the phone number there, 360-992? Whoever that is, would you like to make a comment? Maybe not. So Brendon, would you like to say a last thing and then
Yeah.
check out?
Thank you all so much for listening and for your thoughts and comments, and special thanks to my mom. A lot of the values and you know, work that you see is instilled from her, and the reason why I do what I do, I think, is probably the same reason that she does what she does, and we probably all have fairly similar whys in what we do in our respective time. So just want to say thank you all, and I really enjoyed being here with you tonight.
And thank you again, Brendon. That was a wonderful presentation. You know, one of the things that IONS is about and our community group focuses on is, you know, the transformation of consciousness on this planet. And it's really heartening and inspiring to see somebody who's bringing that into architecture, because when the new consciousness has to permeate every system and structure and process that we do, and to see that it's happening in architecture through you is just wonderful. And to have a more human-centered world where people matter more than money and profits and all the other things, that actually creating spaces where people feel like people and feel valued is really important. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And someday maybe we can see one of your buildings. You can invite us to an opening.
Absolutely.
All right.
Might be with masks, but
okay. So we're a little early, but thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next month.